everybody, and welcome to another 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. And well, friends, we all as investors want to get a shareholder return. But what if I could tell you that not only can you make money, but you can also do good in the healthcare space, and the time for this investment is now? Well, if that's what you're after, then you need to watch the entire interview today, because we are joined by Adherium and its CEO, Dawn Bitz, because Dawn is going to talk about how Adherium is focused. There's a lot of stability there. Their product is tested, and we as investors can enjoy the ride because the business is undergoing its transformation, and the next 18 months in particular are surely going to ignite the business. And with that, Dawn, welcome.
Greg, so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Dawn, you recently joined Adherium. What was the big attraction to you?
Yeah. So yes, I'm on. I think I've just covered my first 90 days of being with the organization. What was most attractive to me? So I've actually been in the industry for a very long time, and specifically in the respiratory side of the business for roughly the last 18 years. So when I was looking to join a new company, and Adherium, of course, came across my desk for me to investigate. Number one, the company is solving one of the largest problems in respiratory medicine, which is keeping patients on their medications, and specifically asthma and emphysema, COPD, or kind of those patients that have smoker's cough.
Right.
We know medications work, and it's just keeping them on those medications. So the Adherium platform, the Adherium technology, and the Hailie smart sensors themselves actually measure how much the patient is using, how often they're using it, and can give clinicians the digital information to know that their patients are using their medications, and to ultimately prevent those patients from getting into the hospital, getting worse, and ultimately hopefully prevent some of them from succumbing to the disease.
Right. Hey, Dawn, before we get into the economics and so forth, at Adherium, maybe talk about how asthma and how many, we all know people that have asthma and have some type of respiratory issues, but why is adherence to the product so difficult?
Right. That's a great question. So adherence to the product is so difficult. And you kind of think about human nature. And I sort of pose this back to you and the
Right.
investors who are listening to this. When you feel bad and you go to the hospital or you go to the doctor and they give you an antibiotic, for example, and you
Right.
start taking that antibiotic because you don't feel well, after a bit, you start feeling better. You don't necessarily maybe take those last couple of pills, or you skip a day here or there. Well, respiratory patients actually, again, by human nature, they
Right.
don't feel good. They start to take their medications, they go see their doctor, they get compliant for a period of time, but then it can slack off a bit. But these are chronic respiratory conditions that need a general baseline level of drug in order to prevent them from getting worse. And up until this point, there hasn't been a good, reliable way for physicians and their patients to be able to really see how they're doing in between the doctor's appointment on one day and the doctor's appointment several days later. Adherium technology helps to provide insight into how that patient is doing in between those care episodes, and also allows the patient to self-monitor and see how they're doing and see how they're feeling, and get reminders to sort of change those human behaviors that we naturally fall into.
Right. But Adherium, your product, it does even more than that. It doesn't just have reminders. It also, correct me if I'm wrong, it measures the quality of the patients, what they're, I suppose, inhaling.
Yeah, Greg, you've done your research, you're spot on. So not only does it tell you, if you've missed a dose or if you've got a dose that's coming up, so it's that sort of daily reminder, but it also can actually tell the patient and their physician, clinician, how their technique is. Are they using their inhalers correctly? Are they taking the breath deep enough in to get the medication actually down into their lungs so it's actually effective? And the Hailie Smartinhalers are the only product that has been developed that actually can give that technique and that sort of dosage ability to make sure the medication is actually getting into their lungs. We're the only device that's been on the market that's been able to do that.
Right, which is incredible. And the company, as you know, with developing any product, it's always moves in fits and starts. But as I alluded to in the introduction, the time is now because
Yeah.
the product works. right?
Yeah.
So we're really at that commercialization stage. Maybe talk to us. What does the next 12 months look like for Adherium?
Yeah, so it is an exciting journey. Adherium has been around for a long time. Companies like Adherium, they have to take a little bit of time to figure out what is their go-to-market strategy, exactly what is their identity. And I will tell you that today, and it's an exciting reason why I joined, is that Adherium knows exactly what its identity is. It is a digital health respiratory monitoring platform.
Right,
That's its identity. And with that, it now knows, and we now know how to monetize and to scale and to build that business. And that's what we're actually doing. So, since I've joined in July, we actually have stood up specific infrastructure as early as August to
right,
actually get patients on board using our technology in a way that we can actually bill on a monthly basis and create a recurring revenue stream with those patients. So it's really the first time that we've been able to take ownership of our destiny of what
right.
we're doing from a go-to-market standpoint, and we're seeing and reaping the rewards of that effort as we speak, with growing patients week over week, day over day, and month over month.
Right, which is great to see. And, that distribution strategy, if you will, maybe can you just talk to us about it? Because it's all well and great to have the product, but now you've got to get the product out there. And along with distribution, maybe talk about Intermountain Health and in how that fits in.
Sure. I'm going to take the first bit
Okay.
around the distribution, and then we'll talk a bit about the Intermountain Health, because they're sort of two separate, different initiatives that are a bit interrelated for our overall approach to kind of the next level of the organization. The first, the distribution, and how do we get those patients today on board? So, we've got very substantial contracts with different allergy clinics across the United States. We actually have a couple of contracts with two of the largest allergy groups within the United States. There's kind of five big ones. We have two of those, and underneath those contracts and in collaboration, that gives us access to those patients that actually could use our devices. We then go through, we do some analysis on those patients, make sure that their insurance is aligned with the Adherium, will support reimbursement for our technology. And then we actually literally call those patients. We talk to those patients. We send them our devices. We help them get on board with our technology. And then we provide essentially monthly check-ins with those patients to
Right,
be able to then monitor and help them succeed. That is all billable for us. So that equates to about a 55 US dollar per patient per month fee that we get to charge. That's about 82 Oz, depending on the
right,
exchange rate. But that gives you kind of an economy of scale. And of course, when you take that out to 12 months, that patient's worth just a little bit shy of about $1,000 per patient per year in Australian. So now we have a real line of sight to
right.
A, how to get them on, and B, how to create ongoing value in those patients for Adherium, but better, we're giving them a better quality of life as well.
Right. So it helps everybody all around because, as you mentioned earlier, people do need a little bit of a nudge, a little bit of a reminder, and so forth and so on. And just going into it a little bit more. So at the clinics,
Yes.
is a lot of the Ethereum, I suppose the learning is to teach the actual doctors, to teach the clinicians how does the product work and how it's better?
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of
Okay.
how we onboard a clinic, right? So through these contracts with analogy partners, as one example, we actually train their clinics on the front end to make sure they understand the value of what Adherium brings to their clinic. I won't get into all the details, but there's actually a mechanism to for the clinics themselves to actually make money off of getting their
Right.
patients to utilize this as well. So there's a clinical and an economic opportunity for the clinics themselves. So we spend time with them and we train them. We make sure they understand the value. Then they agree to give us their patient lists, and then that really is the start of the process for us. So I think we are succeeding where others might not necessarily have had the same level of success, because we've got buy-in on the front end
Right.
by the clinicians and their practices on the front end, that carries all the way through to getting their patients onboarded. And then we have a feedback loop back to the clinicians so they can see how their patients are doing. So it creates a completely tied out approach that drives value. It continues to drive their patient onboarding with us, and then it helps us on the retention side to keep the patients on the technology, keep that recurring revenue stream ongoing for us.
Right. And and adding to that feedback loop, can you just talk about how it is so critical to keep patients adhering to the product, to the respiratory product? Because by the time everyone knows, I don't know if everyone, but most people know somebody that's had an attack, they end up in the hospital.
Yeah.
And at that point, they are fairly in a bad state. And I believe that the recurrence rate, if you have one episode, is very high. Maybe talk about how important it is to, I would say, call it early detection.
Yeah, early detection and early intervention, and really the intervention is keeping these patients on their medicines. So let's just take somebody that has emphysema. They've been a
Right.
long-term smoker, and they've been able to essentially maintain their respiratory health for a period of time, yet the disease is there. But that very first attack that they have, what happens is you get lung damage essentially that
Right.
occurs from that very first attack. And so that makes that damage actually makes you more prone to subsequent attacks. And so that first attack kind of begins to cascade to your next attack, which
Yeah.
begins to, and the frequency starts to increase, and then the severity actually goes up. And I was actually just meeting with a key opinion leader yesterday here in Australia, and he was telling me that that first attack actually you have about a 50% chance of increasing your potential for death within the first 4 years just by that first attack. So,
Wow.
getting patients to use the medication is vital, even if they've had their first attack, to get them to use it to prevent subsequent attacks. Again, really helps the quality of life for the patients and the longevity.
Right. Okay. Now I'm going to go back, Dawn, for a second. Intermountain Health. Maybe
Yes.
talk about that.
Yes. Well, Intermountain Health is a vitally and very important relationships that we have at Adherium. So what our relationship with Intermountain Health did is we actually sold them about 4,000 of our Hailie devices for them to use into a quality improvement study. And that study is essentially a real world utilization of the Adherium product to be the engine to that study for them to look at adherence to medications, for stickiness of is the patient using the medication over time, but all the way through to does it actually impact their hospitalizations, emergency department visits, and the costs. And all of those things come into play underneath this eye care study. The exciting thing is that we've had 850 patients. Well, actually, we're at 950 right now, but we did 850 analysis just a few weeks ago. We released some data publicly that looked at the adherence of our technology in that study. And what we were able to show is that our technology actually drove about a 64% adherence in asthma patients and about a 67% adherence in these COPD or emphysema patients. Now, some of your investors probably aren't medical people, and so like,
No,
what does
definitely.
that mean, right?
I was
And
just going to ask that. Yeah.
yeah, so what that means and what the literature tells us is that if we can drive a threshold of about 60% adherence, we can actually reduce patients' hospitalizations by about 50% and costs by about 50%. So just by reaching that 60% threshold, that is kind of the magic number. And that's what we
Okay.
were able to show in that eye care data. We've got more data coming. We've got more releases coming specifically about the specific reduction of hospitalizations and costs. Those are forthcoming. I can't share you the details on what that looks like, but you talked about the time is now to invest in
Yeah.
Ethereum. Typically you want to invest whenever it's before big things happen, and we are on the cusp of more big things happening. Than what we have today. And what we have today is super exciting. We've got real patients on our technology. We are driving real money. We've got line of sight to scale of patients that we continue to deliver upon. And this Intermountain Health data, largest data set to date. And every time I talk to a doctor about it or a key opinion leader, they are in their jaws are dropped when they see what that data looks like. So the market and the medical community is super excited about it.
Great. And also that data that you're acquiring now, healthcare economics, for better, for worse, all medical institutions look at healthcare economics in a big way, and especially the insurers.
Yes.
Now, insurance, and for people that are not so familiar in the US, getting on insurance schemes is massively, massively important. It just drives so much of the economics. Can you talk to us about the data that you're collecting and I guess those discussions with potential payers over the next circa 12 months?
Yeah, great question about the payers piece, because that is actually the next, I would say, big inflection point in the business opportunity for Adherium. So today we're working with the clinics. We're doing this RPM model, the fee for service model. So that gives us, essentially, an eye to cash flow or to break even status, right? But that next big point is we've got to get these insurers and contracted with us in something called a value-based program. Those value-based programs are, in so many ways, the golden ticket to success. To give you a bit of an analog, there's a company called Omada Health. They did an RPM model just like we're doing, kind of this fee-for-service bit that we're doing literally today. They were then able to translate that and get onto a couple of insurance with insurance companies onto one of these couple of these value-based payer programs. That then gave them the fuel to go public in the United States on the NASDAQ. Their IPO was back in June. It was about $1 billion valuation of their IPO. So that's the playbook that we're taking.
Right.
Build the RPM model today, use the data from Intermountain Health, continue to build out our infrastructure so we can support getting those contracts, demonstrate our ability to succeed in getting patients on at a scale that's meaningful, and being able to take that entire package to the insurance companies to get on these contracts. We're having those conversations right now. We're not exactly ready yet as of this moment in time to bring that entire package to them. We've got a little bit more work to do on the infrastructure build out, but we have line of sight, maybe sometime mid or first half of 2026. Again, I can't commit to anything just this moment in time, but that's the time where we could start to pull the trigger on these conversations in earnest. But great news is we already have great ongoing conversations with Cigna and other entities. They're very excited about what we're doing, and we just need to make sure our house is in order. The investors, you guys are helping us obtain the dollars to be able to continue to do that. So your support is vital. But that is the trajectory that we are on to demonstrate our ability to fulfill these contracts, get the contracts, and then, of course, look to take the playbook page from Omada Health's journey.
Right. Hey, Dawn, as you said, investors, the path is very, very clear forward. All these, especially in the medical space, it costs a lot of money. Can you just tell us a little bit about the funding runway at this point?
Right. So, we are working with our current investors today to continue to provide some cash. At present, we do about $1 million of burn a month. So again, as you know, these types of medical device companies, that's just a pretty normal type of an approach. But the great news is we're really using that money thoughtfully. We're using it to build out our commercial organization, primarily in the United States. We've redistributed and reshuffled some of our R&D funding into the support of the commercial side. And what we're seeing is the fruits of our labor. So just since I have joined, we've gone from kind of hundreds, a few hundred patients on the RPM model prior to my appointment. We stood this call center up in August, and really, as of October, we're 900 plus patients where we ship the devices and getting them onboarded. And just to tell you, week over week, last week we did 117 shipments. This week we're on track for 150 shipments. So every single week that goes past, we continue to increase the numbers of patients that have access to the technology, which ultimately creates our opportunity to continue to monetize those patients.
Right. And Dawn, when you have since you've joined in a short time, 8 to 9-fold increase, that certainly says a lot there. Dawn, we have to keep these interviews short. If there was one item that you'd want every investor or prospective investor to know about Adherium, what would that be?
Yeah, so Adherium's, again, been a company that's been around for a long time. There's probably been a little skepticism on, does it have a trajectory? What I can tell you is, in so many ways, the time is now for Adherium. I had mentioned earlier that We know who we are. We
Yeah.
know our identity. We know how to scale this company, and we are taking the actions and the steps today to make that happen. And as you said, growth week over week, month over month, and what you're going to see is year over year growth that continues to drive that forward in a way that, again, creates recurring monetizable revenue.
Right. Dawn, thank you so much for your time. Investors, if you want to participate in medical space with recurring revenue, large upside, definitely Adherium is worth a look. Thanks a lot.